Hi everyone, and welcome to a new edition of You Are My Boro with myself, Scott Wilson, and Dom Shaw from the Northern Echo. The Boro bandwagon rolls on. The playoff dream very much still alive. And Dom, you are going to be heading off on the road to Hull for what is it's a big one now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah, it does feel like biggest game of the season. Would you say?
I think if you take the cup stuff out of it,
Yeah,
biggest league game.
Yeah. And I know we're going over all ground here, but again, for Boro to be in this position, I actually think Boro are unfortunate, really, to be 6 points back. I think like 7 games ago, if someone had said Boro are going to go on this run, you'd probably think they'd be a little bit closer.
Yeah.
Than 6 points, although I know at that stage that they were out of it. So the two ways to look at it at the weekend just gone is like obvious disappointment that Norwich won and Hull won, and Coventry won. But equally, you just have to hang on in there, don't you? And as Carrick said afterwards, the longer we're in it with a chance, the better. And I think that's probably the healthy way of looking at it, isn't it? Rather than kind of hanging too many hopes on it. Wednesday night feels decisive, doesn't it? If you were to go there and lose, then we'd probably be here again for the umpteenth time this season, writing off Boro's hopes. If you win there, then again, go to Ipswich with not renewed belief, but even more belief.
We'll look forward in a second. Before we do, let's have a very quick look back at the weekend. You were at the Riverside Dome. I don't like to say it, but I think we both said 2-0.
Yeah.
Boro to get the job done professionally, 2-0. That's exactly what it was. The Emmanuel Latte Lath show again, really. Firstly, just the general performance. I think both in terms of this and the Chef Wed game, the kind of routine home win that there probably hasn't been enough of this season. Fair?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And especially, Boro didn't play that well on Saturday. Swansea were dreadful. I was taken aback by how bad Swansea were. And just a lack of ambition they showed, really. And I'm sure you've read or seen Luke Williams's comments by now afterwards. He was I was taken aback by that. So Williams came into the press room afterwards and sat down. And I was sat on my own on the front, and I'm kind of waiting for someone from the Swansea end to ask questions, and there wasn't anyone. The only interview he was doing was out in the concourse with the radio. So I just kind of asked the generic kind of, what did you make of that? You must be disappointed. And he absolutely atrocious game, diabolical game, an embarrassment for the championship or whatever he said. Michael Carrick came in afterwards, and you kind of say to Carrick, look, Luke Williams has called it a diabolical game. Does that matter when you win? And it doesn't, does it? Especially at this stage.
At this stage of the season, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And Boro, they were gifted a helping hand. The first goal, Swansea's defending for the first goal was dreadful, but Latte Lath came alive to get the ball in the box, and he was the liveliest attacking player on the pitch throughout. And then his second goal, I thought his second goal was excellent. And that's 10 league goals now for the season, 12 in all competitions. I think that's a really promising return when you consider how poor we're at the start of the season and how Boro were finding the feet. And then the injuries he's had. And the injuries he picked up against Port Vale and Chelsea both came at a time when he was finding his feet, really. And I wrote on Sunday, you do wonder where Boro would be had Latte Lath stayed fit. Now, that's not hanging everything on Latte Lath, but the fact that they'd have had a striker in that period of games, they went without having a striker, didn't they? And they were having to kind of mend and make do and play various different players there. I don't think there's any doubt that if Boro had had Latte Lath or a striker fit in that spell of games, they'd have picked up a few more points at least, and they'd have been even closer at the top 6.
It's 5 in the last 7 for him, which, is, and like you say, it feels like this is almost the first time all season he's had a real injury-free run at it to be able to get ahead of Steino and being safe in the knowledge that he is the main man. He's going to start every game, which I think potentially has helped him as well. I think a hat tip to the Red Faction for the new Latte Lath song, which I suspect is going to be the soundtrack to the last month of the season. I mean, if we look ahead to next season, we've kind of paved the way for it by saying, well, Boro will have to bring in at least one striker in the summer, maybe two. That's where they need to spend the money, etc., etc. And I think, to a large extent, that still stands. But, how far are we off a position where we're saying, well, whoever they bring in, Latte Lath probably starts the season as Boro's number one striker, come what may?
Well, I don't think you're far off there at all. If Latte Lath is to continue this current form, even if he was to get another 2 or 3 goals and a couple of goals in the last 5 games, and you're ending with the season with what would that be? 7 in 11, 7 in 12, something like that. He scored 8. He scored 8 in his last 13 when you look back at the games before his injuries. There's no doubt that Boro still need to strengthen up front. One striker, like you say, possibly 2. But I think Latte Lath is making a strong case to say I should be given a chance to continue this next season. And Carrick, we spoke to Carrick afterwards and kind of said to him, last year he talked a lot about Chuba Akpom being in a position where he just wanted the next game. The next game couldn't come soon enough. And, I said, is Latte Lath there now? And it's kind of a shame the season's ending for him. And he said, well, yeah, but there's no reason he can't take this into the summer and start like this next season. What you'd think is come the start of next season, the selection will be judged on what we've seen in pre-season and the summer and how things have played out. But if Latte Lath continues his current form, whoever comes in up front is going to have to make quite an immediate impact, I think, to jump straight to the front of the queue. And just to make the point here again, I think we've made it a few times. You can't help but feel sorry for Josh Coburn because what an opportunity this would have been for him this season. And there's nothing to say that Coburn wouldn't have had a run of goals and games like that, but it's kind of been taken out of his hands, hasn't it? And we've got 5 games left now. Yeah. Are we going to see Coburn again this season?
Well, it's looking less and less likely, isn't it? At least to any kind of meaningful degree. Just one last one on Latte Lath. I mean, I think in the first half of the season, it was always pretty obvious there was a player there. His movement was always very good. I think the weakness in the first half of the season was a lack of composure, scruffiness in front of goal. He would go clean through and it never really looked like scoring. To a degree, there's still a little bit of that in his play, but I think he's definitely looking more clinical and more comfortable in front of goal now. And I think an awful lot of that is probably just, as I say, yes, confidence, but also just getting that run in the side and actually staying injury-free for a reasonably long period of time to get into a bit of attack and rhythm. He seems to have benefited massively from that.
Yeah, that second goal on Saturday felt like one of those that earlier in the season that doesn't end up in the top corner. I think as well, and Carrick's talked about it a lot, I think the players are probably playing, his teammates are playing to his strengths a bit more now as well. They know what he's about. And that early on in the season, the front four looked so muddled, didn't it, really? It was kind of changing every week. There was no consistency to it. Whereas in the second half of the season, the injuries have not benefited Boro clearly, but I think one plus point to come from it has been the fact that because Carrick at any given time has had so few attacking options available, he's kind of been forced to play a consistent front three or front four, hasn't he? I mean, you look at this front four now: Jones, Azaz, Greenwood, and Latte Lath. I'd be a surprise if that was to change in the final weeks of the season. I know Silvera's there, Gilbert's there, but it'd be a surprise if they came in to start, wouldn't it? And I think
I agree. As long as they stay fit, I think that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, another goal on Wednesday would go down a treat.
Wouldn't it just? Well, right. So let's look at Wednesday and the kind of general state of things. Then 5 games left for Boro. I think, as we've been saying all along, Southampton well away and are going to finish in 4th position. West Brom still look like they're pretty much there. They've got a 6-point gap to the playoff places. Not impenetrable, but it'd be a surprise if they dropped out of it. So we're looking at Norwich 6th, played 41-67. Coventry 7th, played 40-63. That game in hand for Coventry looks potentially significant for them. Boro then obviously 8th, 41-61. Hull 9th, 40-61. Preston 10th, 60. We're recording this on Tuesday morning, so it's obviously before Michael Carrick's presser, which I know you're going along to, Dom, and we'll touch on, but it's also before the Tuesday night game, so there will be a little bit potential for movement before Boro actually kick off on Humberside. But the top and bottom at the moment is 6 points behind Norwich on the same number of games, 2 points behind Coventry having a game in hand, level on points with Hull having a game in hand. I mean, as you said right from the outset, it feels like a game that Boro really need to win. A draw keeps them level with Hull. You're probably then wondering on what Norwich and Coventry have done, but it's certainly one they can't afford to lose, and it feels like one they really need to win.
Yeah, I think your problem with the draw is you'd then have to go to Ipswich and win. Whereas I think, Carrick admitted after the game on Saturday that they might need 15 points. They might need to win every game. Would 4 wins and a draw potentially be enough? I think if we're sat here now, if someone offered you 4 points from Hull and Ipswich, I think you take that going into the Leeds game. But then I think you'd probably have to win the last 3. It comes back to what we were saying last week, wasn't it? That it feels like those 2 last games, Cardiff and Watford, have to win those 2 games. Had to win the Swansea game, which they did. What can you get out of these next 3 games? I think you probably need at least 7. Probably. Anything.
Yeah, I agree, because if nothing else, because Norwich and Coventry are playing well, aren't they? It's not like the sides above Boro are stuttering and are scraping around performing. I mean, Norwich obviously winning that derby game. They just seem to have the Indian side over Ipswich, don't they? Ipswich cannot seem to get a result against Norwich. And obviously Coventry beating Leeds, 2 massive results for them, which will give them a whole load of confidence moving forward. So yeah, they will probably drop some points between now and the end of the season. But I think it's starting to look fairly fanciful to think that they're going to lose half the matches they've got left. That doesn't feel likely. So, precious little wriggle room for Boro, as we've kind of been saying all along. So in terms of Hull then, you're obviously going to see Michael Carrick later today. There will be an update there in terms of where players are at and stuff. The big talking points selection-wise ahead of Hull are clearly Vandenberg and Hackney, who were back in the squad against Swansea, but did not come onto the pitch. How do you feel the likelihood is? It's the classic dilemma, isn't it? Of do you just stick with a winning team because they've been playing well, they've been keeping clean sheets, it's clearly working at the minute, but you do have a square peg in a round hole in terms of Johnny Howson playing at centre half. Now, he's shown that he's more than capable of doing it, and he's done it very, very well in the last 2 games. But in these next run of 3 games, and specifically for the Hull match, is this a scenario where really you want Howson back into midfield so Vandenberg comes into that team? I definitely think if either of them start on Wednesday night, it's much more likely to be Vandenberg than Hackney, simply because of the respective length of times that the pair of them were out. If it was me, I think I'd be putting Vandenberg back in for the whole game and moving Howson into midfield, because I think you need him there.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only kind of sticking point is Carrick said on Saturday that they weren't really fit enough to be involved on Saturday, but he wanted them back in. Now, did he bring them back in with Wednesday's game in mind to kind of get them back involved, but not put them on? And because he said afterwards, let's try and get through the next couple of days and then make a call for Wednesday. So make a call on starting them. He can't mean make a call on putting them on the bench again, can he? So it's clearly
going to be on there.
Yeah, it's clearly in his mind. I think I'd lean toward. I think I'd do that. I think I'd go with Vandenberg back in defence and Hackney in midfield. I think am I leaning toward? No, I think he'll do that. Yeah, I think he'll do that. I think he'll put Vandenberg in and put Hackney in midfield. Howson in midfield. Yeah. The suggestion afterwards that he's going to have a look at them and then make a call. I'd be surprised if Hackney came back in. Just because the time he's been out. And I think Lewis O'Brien's been playing really well in midfield. I thought O'Brien was good on Saturday. But yeah, I think that'll be the change. Vandenberg.
And if that was the change, would you go with O'Brien ahead of Barlaser? Because I think I would.
Undoubtedly. Yeah, undoubtedly. Yeah. I didn't think Barlaser was brilliant again on Saturday a couple of times. He did have a bad game.
I thought he played really well against Chef Wed, but I did, from the word go, I caveated that in that he was against a side who just did not seem to want to get anywhere near him or even attempt to close him down. So every time he got the ball in that game, he had the time and space to pretty much do whatever he wanted with it. He won't get that against Wednesday night.
And he was ponderous in possession a couple of times. He almost got caught out very early in the second half when he nearly scored an own goal and then gave the ball away again shortly after. I don't think he needs hooking out the team by any means. It wouldn't surprise me if he stayed in tomorrow. But if Howson moved into midfield, I'd be amazed if it wasn't O'Brien he was partnering. What'll be interesting is when they're all fit, because I think O'Brien's had a good run of games now, and there hasn't really been a spell. I suspect the wise money would be on Howson and Hackney, wouldn't it? But I think O'Brien's had a good run of games, and for all, there's been a lot of talk about Ayling, who I think is looking more and more of an obvious permanent signing, and Greenwood, who I think is probably looking less and less of a permanent signing. O'Brien's probably somewhere in the middle, isn't he? It's an interesting one. The obvious one is kind of weird. I mean, first things first, and Nottingham Forest going to stay up. If Nottingham Forest come down and they're a championship team, then there's the wages to take into account. But I don't think it's hard to make a case for Boro wanting to sign him, because I think he's getting better and better.
I think you're right, and he's obviously had such a kind of injury hit campaign that only really now that we're starting to see the player that the Boro kind of knew they were signing all along, and he's definitely shown enough in the past month or so to suggest that he'd be a worthwhile signing. The caveat with that is that, he signed a pretty decent deal to go into the Premier League with Forest. He will be on, in terms of Boro's wage bill, big money.
Yeah.
And that will be the issue. You transfer fee and wages. Can Boro afford to do that deal? To be perfectly honest, if Forest stay up, it wouldn't surprise me if they got him on another loan.
Yeah.
Because, if Forest stay up, we all know the FFP issues they have. There's going to have to be some degree of a kind of clearing of the decks there. Well, are they likely to get their money back on O'Brien? Almost certainly not, I would suggest. So you would imagine the next best thing from their point of view could be another loan. So Boro might well look to go down that route.
On the subject of a couple of players we've mentioned there, Boro announced last week that they're having a Player of the Year event at the Town Hall, Thursday the 2nd of May. Tickets are on sale now. 30 quid, 25 quid for season ticket holders. If you go on the Boro website or the Town Hall website, you'll find more details there. Who are the candidates? Because I think it's an interesting one. In previous years, so last year, clearly Akpom was the runaway candidate. But even after Akpom, Hackney, Giles, Archer, even though he was only in for half a season, you could go on and on and on. This year, it's not as obvious. I think there's three. I think Rav Vandenberg, for me, I think would be Player of the Year. Just when you consider his age and the fact although he came in with a lot of hype and talk, acclimatising to the Championship as easy as he has done is not difficult. I think he's had a hugely impressive season. Vandenberg would be mine. I think Howson's in the conversation again, which is quite staggering, really. Well, it's not. It's to be expected. But here we are just having the same conversation if we have every single year. I think Howson's in the conversation. The other one I'd put in is Matt Clark. I think when you consider what went before, to come back in and be such an important player, Boro they've kept 2 clean sheets in 17 games. They've now kept 6 in the last 7, and Clark's been central to that. I don't think Clark will win it, but I don't think it's difficult to make a case for that. But I'd go with Vandenberg. What about you?
So I think the other one, the other player who probably is playing his way onto the shortlist is Latte Lath.
Latte Lath, yeah.
Because I think he's doing enough now to just make you think what might have been if he had been fit all season, as we kind of started the vid by saying. So I think he's in the equation. For me, it's Howson. For me, it's Howson again. yes, predictable in a way, but in terms of just holding the season together, being one of the best players when Boro have been playing well, but also being one of the best players when Boro were going through their ruts and their tough periods. For being a player who's, slotted in at centre-half in the last month, like he's played there all his career, for being the leader, for everything, for all of that, I see why you would go. Vandenberg is the most talented player in this Boro squad. I think we can say that already. Maybe Hackney, but I think Vandenberg is exciting. His potential is so exciting, and he has done so well given how young he is, and the fact that he's making his first steps into the Championship. So I wouldn't violently disagree with that, but I just think in terms of their influence and impact over the season as a whole, I just don't think you can look past Johnny Howson.
The other one who I think would be worth a mention, again, clearly not Player of the Year, but I think Isaiah Jones, considering what he went through last year and how we spoke about that in the summer and his difficulties off the pitch, and he wasn't at all involved for so long last season, to come back and to play such a central role again, I think he's another one who deserves a lot of credit.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and he now is somewhere very, very close to his absolute best, which is obviously great for Boro, but is great for him as well. Just one last one on how pretty much all the players we've talked about there have had, to some degree, injury issues this season that they've had to battle against. Now, Howson has had as well, to a degree, but at his age and given the role that he plays, the number of games Johnny Howson gets through season after season with Boro, and has done again this season, is absolutely incredible, really. We kind of take it for granted because he's always there and he looks after himself and he's the consummate pro and all of that. But to be doing what he's doing at his age, just to be available when Michael Carrick's had to go at the well and hasn't been able to make changes and has desperately needed someone to plug gaps, Johnny Howson's been there for him, which is incredible, really.
And is it then inevitable that he signs a new deal, or that he's offered a new deal?
I think it is, because I don't see if you let Howson go, it's going to cost you more money in the long run to go out and sign a replacement for Johnny Howson next season, whether that's in terms of transfer fees. Listen, I don't know the absolute brass tacks of what Johnny Howson is on, but I do know that all the contracts that he's been offered recently have fitted into Boro's new financial regime and not blown the wage bill and not got them above a level where they want to be. So, he's clearly on a wage level that Boro are comfortable with and fits in with what they're doing now. Are you going to sign a ready-made replacement for what Johnny Howson's given you this season in that wage bracket? I just don't see it. So, and that's even before you get to his influence off the pitch and his relationship with Michael Carrick and the fact that somewhere down the line he might be a coach and eventually there'll be an opportunity to get a bit of coaching into him and develop him in that way. All of that kind of stuff. That's another side of it. But even just in terms of Johnny Howson, the player this season, I just don't see why you don't give him a new contract. And all the chats that we have with Johnny Howson and everything you know about him, I don't see Johnny Howson thinking, I'd like to finish my career elsewhere. I feel I can get more money. I don't think any of that will come into his mind. I think if Boro offer him a new deal, another year on what he's on at the minute, I think that happens. And I think really for all parties, it feels like an absolute no-brainer.
It does, because if you take the age out of it, and I know it's football, you can't, but if you judge it purely on what you see on the pitch and what he offers off the pitch, it'd be bonkers, wouldn't it, to not keep him here? And I think where Boro you would think would want to be in a position where when Howson eventually does go, now whether that's him retiring at Boro, he made it clear a couple of months ago when we spoke to him that he has no intentions of retiring this summer, and why would he? But Boro would want to be in a position where the replacement's already in the building. You don't really want to be having to go out and replace, like, A, someone what he offers on the pitch, but B, your captain and all that comes with that as well. And as much as we were saying we've been hugely impressed by O'Brien, his future's still uncertain. Hackney's a different sort of player. Barlas is a different player, and in the 18 months or whatever he's been in the club, I don't think we've seen enough to suggest he's going to replace Howson. They haven't got a replacement for him yet, have they?
No, they haven't. And it's one of those. Listen, we say this constantly, but there is every chance that next season Johnny Howson's standards will start to slip a little bit, because they're going to have to at some point. But even if they do, they're not going to fall off a cliff in the space of a month, 2 months. He will still be a hugely useful, influential player, even if he's sub for half the games next season. He'll still be a massive influence off the pitch. I don't see what the risk is from Boro's point of view, because it's a 1-year contract. You know, if you're offering him a 4-year contract, that's a completely different conversation. But for a 1-year contract, you know what you're going to get from Johnny Howson next season. As I say, even if his standards start slipping by 20, 30%, I still think you will get more than enough out of him, both on and off the pitch, to make that a more than worthwhile investment.
What do we reckon Wednesday night then? Hull, I was just looking there. They've won 1 in the last 7 at home, Hull. They've only won 7 of their 20 home games so far.
But there was 6 unbeaten. Not 6 unbeaten. There was 6 without a win before they won at Cardiff at the weekend. That was a massive result for them. And while it is a return to form, playing Cardiff at the minute feels a little bit like Boro playing Sheff Wed and playing Swansea, where as long as you turn up and you're on it, you should win that game, and Hull did. Ryan Giles missed the game at the weekend, which was interesting. He was out in, and apparently he's touch and go for Wednesday night. Matty Jacob, who came in to replace him, by all accounts, did pretty well. But you would imagine if Giles is anything like fit, Rosenior will put him back in for this one against Boro. They've got an attacking threat, Hull. There's no doubt about that. Cavallio, Tufan, Philogene. There is a real threat there. They have stuttered, though. I think this is a real chance for it. I think of the next 3. This feels like the easiest, and that's not to say it's easy by any stretch of the imagination. I worry more for Boro at Ipswich and against Leeds than I do against Hull. I think they're very, very capable of going and getting a win at Hull. I think it'll be tight. I could see it being 1-0, and I don't predict that very often in Boro games, but I think it'll be a lot tighter than a number of recent games we've seen Boro. Don't think it'll be a lot of chances. I think to a degree, both teams will be a little bit cagey. But I think Boro can win it. And I think they will win it. I'm going to go 1-0 Boro. Because like I say, I've always felt that of the 3 coming up, this is the one I'd be most confident about.
I fancy Boro. It's a game Boro need to win, but it's a game Hull need to win as well at home in front of their crowd, on the back of that winless stretch at home. As I say, 1 in 7 in 2024, and I just think that plays into Boro's favour. I am surprised by Hull. They were bold in January, weren't they?
Yeah.
A bit strangely bold, in that of all seasons, you look and think, well, even if they've got, and I know this doesn't mean you can't show ambition, but even if they do or did get in the top 6 this season, it still looked an incredibly tough ask to go up. I looked at that in January and think, wouldn't it be wiser to maybe, have a go, but do it wisely and do it again in the summer and look to build towards next season? Now they might be doing that, and they might look really strong next year. But I think there was a general acceptance or general expectation that they were going to do a bit better than they have done in the last couple of months.
So I covered Hull winning at Sunderland on a Friday night in January. Cavallio scored the winner. It was 1-0. He'd only just signed. And I thought at that stage they had the look of a side who would strengthened in key areas in January and would get in the top 6. Listen, they still might, as we've been saying, but they haven't clicked into gear as you thought they would. In fact, there's an argument that they were probably just as strong, if not leaving a little bit stronger pre-January, before they brought everybody in.
And that does happen, doesn't it? So going back to Neil Warnock's Boro season, when Boro were right there at Christmas and then brought in Balassi and Cabano and that sort of that window, and Boro got worse as that season went on, didn't it? It does happen.
Yeah.
Or it might not be linked to the transfers. It might just be a team kind of losing form at the wrong time or finding the level or whatever. But yeah, Hull would have probably been my pick for 6th back at the end of January, start of February.
Yeah.
Now clearly Norwich and Coventry are in a far stronger position. I fancy Boro to win. I agree. I think Ipswich looks tough. And Ipswich, I know they didn't at Norwich. I thought they were poor at Norwich. I watched that game in the Riverside press room on Saturday, and I was surprised by how kind of toothless they were, really. But that looks tough on Saturday, wasn't it? Saturday now, I'd snap your hand off for a point at Ipswich, I think. But yeah, I fancy Boro. I'll go 2-1. If you're going 1-0, I'll go 2-1.
Okie doke. Well, enjoy Michael Carrick this afternoon. Obviously, all the updates, all the latest from the press conference and the preview stuff will be on the Northern Echo website and in the print product of the paper tomorrow. Dom, you're at the I keep wanting to say the KCOM. I keep wanting to say the KC. Then I want to say the KCOM, but it's the MKM, isn't it? You're at the MKM Stadium tomorrow night. So again, all the live coverage, all the reaction, all the analysis on the Northern Echo website and in the Thursday morning's paper. Quick one, if you're watching this on YouTube, then please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. We do look through them. We do try and respond to everything you're dropping underneath this vid. If you're listening on one of the podcast platforms, then please rate and review. It does us a massive favour. And we will be back at the back end of the week to reflect on everything Hull and look ahead to Ipswich and Leeds just around the corner from that. So, and if you're going to Hull, have a great night. Get the Latte Lath song booed out when he bangs in the winner in that 1-0 victory. And we will we'll see you later in the week. Bye-bye.